Oh, Fig fam, how are we? Figs and coffee. Wait, figs and coffee, figs and coffee, fig coffee, fig coffee? So Fig Brew reached out to me and says, we have a coffee alternative that is roasted figs. And let me tell you guys, it tastes like coffee, but it's roasted figs. So I have figs and coffee, figs and coffee. Does that make sense? So I actually really like it. It's a great, like, healthy prebiotic alternative, they said, and it tastes really good and it tastes like coffee. So they basically take dried figs or spent figs and they roast them and they make a grind out of them, and it has a lot of health benefits, all the polyphenols you would want, but it doesn't have the same caffeine. So don't get me wrong, I'm still drinking coffee in the morning, but when I've had my fill of caffeine and I need to switch it up, this Fig Brew kind of fits the bill, and I'm really stoked. Like, who would have known that figs and coffee would actually have fig coffee? So if you guys are interested, check out in the comments section. They're super nice, they're super helpful, and they have a wealth of knowledge. If you're curious on it, they'll be able to answer questions better than me, but guys, it's delicious. And I'm drinking figs in the fig orchard while eating figs. So now we have figs in all aspects. But fig coffee from Fig Brew, thanks guys. It tastes delicious. So we are getting our first freeze. You wouldn't think, because right now it's 70 degrees, but here in the southeastern coast of North Carolina, if we get dips in the northern jet stream, then we can get Arctic air come down and we can have a freeze. So I want to talk about, what are we going to do with this incoming freeze? So here's what I'm going to do to prepare for it. Here, I'm going to tell you what I do with the fruit. I'm going to tell you what I do with the trees in the containers, the trees in the ground, and we'll go from there, and what to expect and how I can advise you guys, whether you're in a colder climate, say north of zone 8 and like 7B and below, and you have trees in the ground, or if you're in a warmer climate, maybe not worry about it too much quite yet because your freeze isn't coming. But I want this video to be helpful for you for when those freezes come. What a fig does when it goes dormant from a freeze, what that means for the trees and their health, their growth rates, dormancy, and honestly, this is also segueing into that my fig cutting sale is 1 month out. I really wait for my trees to go into dormancy, to lose their leaves, and they do it in a variety of patterns. As you can see, I still have some green growth here, and that plays a role in dieback and in dormancy. So if you haven't signed up on philsfigs.com, that's when I send out my notifications for when my fig cuttings go live. So if you have questions on propagation, reach out to me, subscribe, like, check out my videos on growing fig trees from cuttings. If you buy fig cuttings from me, it comes with a propagation guide. So my goal is to help you guys grow fig trees, not give you fig cuttings, because you then get to have the experience that I have of eating fresh figs off of a tree once you grow your own trees. So check it out, sign up on philsfigs.com so I can let you guys know when my fig cuttings become available for purchase. And now we're gonna jump into it. What I'm gonna do first is harvest all the fruit that I still have on the trees from some of my rejuvenation pruned varieties that ripen later, and just some of my late ripening varieties. And then I'm going to show you how I am going to protect some of the container figs, in-ground figs, and honestly, some of the natural dormancy that I'm going to let them do. But it might involve some dieback, which I'm not stoked about, but I want to show you guys too, to show that I can relate when fig trees have dieback. I can relate if they have green growth and how to protect them, and that it's all going to be okay. So here's some examples. Let's check it out. It's a coral black, not completely ripe yet, but just about there. David Argentile, nope. Brooklyn Park JD. Paradiso Gene. Look at this, honey in the eye. It's even ripping. Delicious variety, Paradiso. Another Paradiso, a little early, but still soft. Look at this one, honey in the eye. More ripe Paradiso figs. Some are a little early, but that's okay. And of course, one of the lead singers of the band, my Figo Preto, covered in netting. These figs are so good. Oh my gosh, it's drying on the tree. Figo Preto is just so good. Ooh. I guess they're more ripe than I thought. Mmm. Look at that. It's supposed to be Col de Dom Mutante, but looks like it reverted back to a Blanc. Oh, what do we have here? Green Ischia? Is it? Maybe. Try. It's not really any sap flow. Ooh. Little bland, but still good. A little firm, underripe. Marucciola de Elba. Tiny little sweet fig. Still firm, but we'll try to go for it. Tiny little sweet fig. Beautiful fig. My last Moro de Caneva. Oh, it's ripe. Amazing fig. This is a 1-year-old cutting, guys. You can see where it took off from. Planted it this spring. And it is now about 7 feet tall. So, yes, that's so cool. 1 year, guys. That's how fast a fig cutting can grow. I have a Salche still left. Oh, guys, heavy hitter right here. What do we have? White Madeira #1. A little bit of splitting, but if you could feel this right now, you'd know just how soft it is. Wow. And there you have it. Moro de Caneva, Figo Preto, Col de Doms, Col de Dama Ramadas, Salche, Maruccio de Elba. Fantastic fig haul, guys. A bowl of amazing figs for my family to eat fresh, to cook with. That's the fall harvest, guys. Delicious. Hey, one for the wife. I already had some.
Can I try it?
Yeah, go for it. It's yours. Love you.
Love you.
All right, guys, you saw all those ripe fruits I just harvested from my Figo Preto tree. And you probably need my mic to hear me better. And chances are a lot of these fruits might not ripen in time. A few of these fruits that are changing color already, if it's just right at that 33, 32 degree mark of a freeze, maybe 31, sometimes the figs that are on here in the tree will still have sap flow and finish ripening. But once you get consistent days below freezing, all these cells in this fruit are going to start rupturing and they're going to start breaking down. And that is just typical of any really green growth for a lot of fig trees in the wintertime when you start getting freezing temperatures. And that's just a normal process. It sheds the old figs, it sheds the old green growth, the leaves fall. If they're not having changed colors already, if there's some new growth, because here in the southeast we can get some new growth, and that's all okay. It's all part of the annual process of a fig tree's deciduous life. And so if you have some figs that are close to ripening, you can try to leave them on if you want. If they are ripe, go ahead and remove them. And if they're not ripe at all, because they might rot if they get frozen and their cells break down, and then you leave them on for another warm-up temperature. And if they're green, people are always asking me, should I remove the old figs? You don't really need to. They'll break down over time. And the one thing I want to highlight here is that all this wood is lignified. And what that means, it's gone from green to brown, and it has a distinct bark layer with an interior cambium layer. And that's really important for winter protection of your fig tree. Sometimes when I'm running a business, when I prune my fig trees, they kind of get exposed to more elements and they're less resilient when you're pruning them. That way, if you prune them in the fall, it's actually a nice time because they can have enough warm temperatures to heal where they've been pruned. If you have green growth and that's died off due to a freeze, it'll fall off and then it'll heal where that part is still alive, that boundary where the bark is there and the green growth had emerged from it, where it can heal as well. So it's a very natural process that if it does have a secondary growth phase and it does get some freezing temperatures, that'll fall off, but it'll still heal. And I'll show you that right here. You guys can see this green growth right here. New leaves, hasn't lignified yet. It's starting to, it's trying to up here. This will not survive the freeze. That will shrivel up and die after a hard freeze. That's okay with me, because if you track it down lower, you can see here, it's kind of still green, but that's actually lignified. It has some sap flow to it if I poke my nail into it, and that is a very healthy sign. This fig is actually kind of soft, but this tells me that that is okay, but up here, that is not okay for surviving the winter. What that means as a whole is if you have an in-ground tree that's big and robust like this, I'm not worried about this at all. I will say this, I probably won't sell this as a fig cutting. If I do, I'll save it for myself. I'll prune at the base here because a lot of green growth can't hold moisture very well when it's trying to be propagated. You have to soak it in water for it to propagate in reality, or have a very humid climate. And since I propagate in my greenhouse, it's hard to maintain that level of exact temperature at a sustainable price point, if that makes sense. So it's not too expensive. Or I do it indoors. But this fig cutting might not make it up to here. It might make it to the base, but I'm more concerned about this branch, and this branch is completely healthy, completely lignified, still has plenty of sap flow. But you notice in the wintertime after freezes, that sap flow will recede from the branches and go down into the base trunk and root ball. And that'll actually help the tree survive the winter. Pretty cool. But that's what green growth does on a big mature tree. I should clarify, if you have younger fig trees like the ones I have here in containers, or container figs that are just managed, these fig trees are okay for a freeze. Once you start getting into the mid-20s, that's when I really do more protection measures with container figs, where I either move them into the greenhouse, the high tunnel I just got, which I'm excited to show you guys, or I move them into the garage. That's when the roots become susceptible to freezing in freezing temperatures, is when you leave those high 20s. And in fact, anyone who has container grown figs doesn't even want to mess with freezing temperatures. You have the ambient ground temperature, which can be anywhere from 45 to 55 degrees, depending on how far you go into the soil. And that's why in-ground fig trees in colder climates can actually survive, because they'll die back to the ground, or their sap flow and all that will be protected in the root ball system. But container figs don't have that protection. My fig trees I've tested have survived mid-20s. Not all varieties have. I've lost some fig trees to it. Wind can play a role in keeping temperatures really cold in the root ball. But for a 32-degree freeze, for all of these trees, I'm not doing anything. I am encouraging dormancy is what I'm actually doing. And any green growth will be foregone because, frankly, I can't air layer anything that is green growth with lignified wood underneath at this point, because I need warmer temperatures in the 70s and 80s to get sustainable root development on air layers. So I am leaning into the winter. I'm leaning into the fall. I am letting these trees go dormant. Anything that has secondary green growth, I am foregoing, and it's just been bonus growth in case figs ripen on it, but they really haven't. And I accept the mild freezing temperatures and high 20s to low 30s only for my big mature container fig trees. In fact, if you look at my patio, I have two examples here. I have a black Tuscan that put out actually more green growth, which is not great. And then I actually have here my Ponte Tresa, which is going dormant as we speak and had a wonderful flush of fruit this year. It's a 4.5-year-old tree. I love it, but it's going dormant. And you know what's really cool about these two varieties of figs, guys? Is that both of these fig trees survived all winter out here unprotected in containers. And I attribute it to the fact that this is the south side of my house. It's on a patio, so between the patio, the house, and the southern light all winter, they get radiant thermal heat. And so this house warms up with the southern light all winter long, and so does the patio. And at night, it slowly emanates some of that heat. And so it actually is a little warmer than the surrounding climate, say if you were out in an open field with high winds and no thermal heat protection. So if you have a southern facing wall in northern climates, you can leave some figs in containers down to that freezing mark. Or if you plant them in the ground, it'll greatly benefit them to be up against the south side of the wall or a house. But container figs can be left outside and dormant in the winter, but not all fig varieties, first of all. So like Ponte Tresa did fine. Black Tuscan worked here this time, but generally Black Madeira types need a little more protection. And then potted mature figs are good into like the high 20s for short periods of time, because down here in Wilmington, we'll get a stint of cold temperatures before it warms back up. But if you have prolonged cold temperatures consistently in freezing, that's when you bring your containers indoors, whether it's to a garage, an unheated shed, or a greenhouse or a high tunnel. As you guys know, I am a fig tree nursery with lots of little baby figs, and little figs like this aren't nearly as cold tolerant as bigger mature trees. These Celeste can still handle a freeze, and I want them to get down to the 32 marker, which is happening this week, and I think tomorrow morning even, because then it'll really usher in going into dormancy. But after this 32-degree mark, I'm going to want to do some protection. And right here, I'm putting in a 25-foot high tunnel that I got on Amazon, and I'm excited. I put the link in the description. And this is just to keep my fig trees protected from the wind, cold enough to stay dormant, but warm enough that they don't completely freeze outside of their tolerance range for temperature. Another important thing to note is right now, I have this white Adriatic that's a young fig tree. I have all my air layers of Coldedon Blanc and Coldedon Gris. And some of the tops of these air layers aren't completely lignified yet, and that means they can't sustain freezing temperatures. They need some more heat and time to really get that nice bark layer. And so a lot of these young air layers of these more temperature sensitive trees, like my Coldedons and Black Madeiras and Manzanitas and Calderona type figs, is that I am going to put these in my greenhouse for the freeze. So you can see here, the healthy growth is still green, and they're just a young tree. So young trees that have not entered any sort of dormancy, I'm giving them winter protection. Young trees that have seen a full growth cycle throughout the year, I am letting them go into dormancy with the 32-degree temperatures, and that's my goal. I don't want to protect these all winter long because it's going to require a lot of energy on my part when I get into fig propagation season, but I want to kind of, they're babies, you know, I want to kind of ease them into dormancy safely and sustainably. When they become bigger trees, I can plant them in the ground just like the mother trees, and they'll live the full life cycle. But for now, when they're young, if you guys have young fig trees that are the more rare varieties that require more heat, that ripen later in the year, by all means, give them a little extra protection. They're not mature potted figs yet. If you're in a colder climate, you're definitely going to want to be doing this. If you guys are dead set on having young fig trees that haven't ripened fruit yet, you're going to want to make sure you have a warm climate to put them in. But see this Coldedon Blanc? That has some fruit on it. And I can actually put this with my papaya tree, because I have this sweet Harbor Freight greenhouse. It's a 10 by 10 by 12. I've had it for like 3 years now. I've countersunk it with gravel. I have shelves. It is just my little piece of peace. And I have my fig trees that I'm probably going to lay across the bottom like this. I'm going to put it right here. It still faces south, but I get all the warm temperatures. In the wintertime, I have insulation across this back wall. I have a pickle barrel here that is for radiant thermal heat as well. And for my young fig trees that are still lignifying, because they had a second flush of growth. They're so young that if they have any dieback, it could kill the whole cutting completely. And so I have to be very mindful of that. So if you have young fig trees, this is how I recommend taking care of them with their leaves. If you don't really have the space for this, what you can do is you can force dormancy, where you prune off all the leaves and fruits and you put them in an unheated shed or an unheated garage, similar to what I did with my pepper video. If you haven't watched my pepper video and putting my peppers in containers from in the ground and overwintering them and forcing dormancy on them, you can force dormancy on fig trees where you prune off all the leaves and fruits, even if it's green growth, and put them into your garage or shed. Make sure light is limited, limit your watering of them, but the second you start introducing heat, light, and water to them, they will wake up again. So something to be mindful of during the winter time. Here's a great example of a young tree that's probably one of these three varieties here: White Genoa, Coledon Blanc, or I-258. I'm pretty sure it's White Genoa. This is an awesome White Genoa variety from Joe Morley from figtrees.net. This is his. I think it's the best White Genoa I've ever had. It's got a nice pink to red interior, and it has a pink ostiole, which is interesting on an Adriatic type fig. Kind of reminds me of this old fig from Figs for Fun forum called Saratoga. But I highly recommend it. I'm actually going to dig it up and move it around to get more sunlight. It's an in-ground tree, but I will have cuttings for it available this winter. But this one is a small rooted fig cutting, and unfortunately with all this green growth and the size that it is, if it were to die back, it might actually not make it through the winter. So I'm going to let it lignify here in the greenhouse. Now if you look at something here like my white Adriatic, you're going to actually see that it's lignified all the way up to where the bud is. And I'm going to just pull these off and I'm going to force dormancy. Look at that. I'm forcing it into dormancy with the terminal bud. This is all lignified. I'm okay with this. And then if you live in a northern climate or you have a young fig tree that looks like this and you want to overwinter it, I'm going to put this in my garage and show you exactly what I do. Come on in, guys. Okay, welcome to the Phil's Fig Shipping Center and winter storage for the peppers and young fig trees. And this is an example, but this is what I would do when I was just starting out 8, 9, 10 years ago and I had young fig trees, is that I store them in a garage. It's not going to get below 45 in here. I don't think it ever has, but it's got limited light, colder temps, and it's relatively dry. And so if I'm ripping off all the leaf growth to force a dormancy like you would these pepper plants, and storing it here with limited light exposure. So wintertime, it's dark, it's cool, and it's drier. If you want to wake these fig trees up, you will do the opposite. You will have warmth, so a warm area, maybe even a heat mat. You will introduce light, or as much light as possible, and you will water regularly if they have a healthy, robust root system. So if they're cuttings, you're going to really want to manage that water. But if you have young fig trees, this is what I recommend. If you have fig trees that are still green, you can force the dormancy as well, but you can also try to get them to harden off or lignify near a windowsill, sunroom, or greenhouse. As for pruning fig trees, you can force dormancy, but I don't typically try to prune off the green growth. If people have asked about that in the past, I tend to leave it alone. Try to mitigate any sort of damage to the fig tree as you can. If it's on the nodes, it's got a way better chance of healing. If you're doing cuts, lignified wood, it requires energy to callus over and heal where those cuts were made. And so if you're pruning your fig tree in freezing temperatures, it's not going to have the energy to heal. So there's actually some advantage that if you have warm fall days, and you know you're going to have a string of warm fall days, then it's actually okay to prune your fig tree. And hopefully we can come back on this later. But if I'm going to actually harvest this cutting for propagation, and I am going to cut at a 45-degree angle following that node, just like that. You see that angle? And what this is going to allow to do is when that bud wakes up, it's going to allow to grow up and around it and heal safely. as you can see, I have lots of sap flow still happening. And so with the cooler temperatures coming up, it's not going to be completely dormant quite yet. It's going to start slowing down. But if you want to prune your fig tree and you're worried about it not healing over in the wintertime, this is a good time to do it because it has enough energy and warmth to callus this over. So when wintertime comes around, it'll actually have a better protection. If you do this in the dead of winter and the coldest temperatures, it's not going to be able to heal and you'll actually see more dieback. And that's just what I've learned over the years. The only reason I do it and I prune at a colder time of year is because the cuttings last longer, and that's better for you guys if you're propagating fig cuttings. I can certainly propagate this now, so can you guys or any of this, but they won't store the same way or transport the same way if I harvested live cuttings because of that sap flow. So something to keep in mind. But as a whole, if you want to prune your fig trees in the fall, you can absolutely do so. But you just want to make sure that it's warm enough that it can actually heal. Otherwise, it won't callus over in time and it'll be susceptible to dieback. If you guys are in warmer climates, warmer than me, I'm less concerned about it. You can prune later in the year. But yeah. You do want to be mindful that you're not doing this too early in the fall, because if you do prune, they might wake up and produce more leaves. I've actually talked about that in my last video with my Stella, where I did harvest some cuttings and it pushed out new growth because we had weeks of warm temperatures. If you know you're getting freezing temperatures ahead and everything really is slowing down, then I want you to know that now is the good time to prune or harvest your fig cuttings. And then when you start getting consistent freezing temperatures and you have outdoor fig trees and they have entered full dormancy, that's a good time to prune as well for propagation cuttings. All in all, seasons are inevitable. The only thing consistent in life is change. And whether you have in-ground trees in a warmer climate, or you have in-ground trees in a cooler climate, or you have container figs in warmer, cooler climates, there's different ways to manage them in the winter to make sure that they have appropriate cold protection. You guys in the Northeast, once you start hitting those high 20s, you're going to want to make sure that those fig trees are in an indoor setting or protected from the wind. If you have in-ground trees, make sure you're wrapping them in burlap after a heavy prune or some sort of insulation material. Or if you're just going to move the branches, make sure you tie them together so everything is tight and well insulated. If you guys are in a warmer climate, lean into the fall. You might get some rogue fig fruits ripening for you in the next few weeks, but if you're seeing freezes happen, the green growth may not survive on your in-ground trees. They may not survive on your potted figs, but shortly after the next few freezes will be a good time to harvest your cuttings for propagation. And actually, if you're in the south where I am and further south, it's a good time to prune as well, because you have enough warm temperatures for the fig trees to heal and callus over before the coldest temperatures that come in the end of December and in January and parts of February. Guys, I'm here to help you grow fig trees. If this was helpful for you, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, reach out with questions in the comments. And if you guys are interested in fig cuttings and growing your fig collection or growing a fig tree, reach out to me. philsfigs.com has an email list you can subscribe to, and I will send out growing guides and fig cuttings for sale shortly. Reach out with questions. Cheers, Fig Fam. Thank you.